Let's deal with the machine at last. As you approach the machine, the path underfoot suddenly changes to a cobbled road. If you hadn't experienced visions like this already in Ter Evron, you'd be tempted to believe that the machine had sucked you into it and deposited you in the middle of nowhere. The sun blazes overhead, and the rolling metals and thick forests on either side of the road could be anywhere in the Deerwood. A shrill cackle turns your head. Standing next to you is a malnourished man clad in a threadbare loincloth and manacles. His entire body is striped with lash marks, and there are scarred pits where his nose and ears should be. He stinks of stale sweat and unwashed filth. You notice someone wandering down the road, but the figure's back is to you. The scarred slave has your attention for now.
I have observed you, Watcher. You came to this land merely because it was here for the taking. And why should you question what was given to you, or whom it was taken from? This is the natural order of kith, gods, and civilizations. You have labored at the pleasure of others. That shriveled hag in Hadrit House, those preening soldiers with more taste for silk than steel, the wretched tribesmen playing out their fantasies of grandeur. And then you cowered and knelt before the gods themselves, begging one paltry favor and receiving riddles and visions in response. And now the gods give you orders and commands, even while you set out to fix what they cannot. Yet what have they offered you?
They offered us the means to stop Wodica and Thaos. That's enough for me. A suspicious grimace crosses Alof's face. I get the feeling this is his way of giving you no new orders on behalf of his own master. Be careful, Laniara. Given the breadth of the iron manacle, it's amazing that he can raise his bone-thin arm. But he does, and he points to the person walking the other way along the road.
The exiled queen is not an ungrateful patron.
You get a better look at the lone figure and realize that she's wearing robes, tattered and singed, but fine nonetheless. On her head is a silhouette of a broken crown. She continues walking, her pace slow but determined.
Finish the work Thaos began. Strengthen Wodica with these souls and allow her to become the most powerful of all the gods, with you as her favored.
I've been working against Wodica this whole time. Why would she thank me now after I've defeated her most loyal servant? The ragged hole in Skane's face wrinkles with disgust. Loyal and weak. Thaos proved his inadequacy when he failed to anticipate you. A plan exposed is worse than none at all. But you have proven resourceful, equal to the schemes of gods. Wodica has a long memory, Watcher, for both friends and foes, and she keeps her oaths. What do you mean by her favored? The recipient of Wodica's blessings. She has always had a place for mortals of particular merit. If you help her now, she will become the most powerful of all the gods, and you will be the one who made her so. Think of the lifetimes of reward you would reap. Pallegina steps towards Skane. Equal parts madness and idiocy. Why would we form an alliance with one who has opposed us at every turn? Skane turns his flinty eyes on Pallegina. So says your companion, who's been abandoned by her own country. Do you really trust her to make alliances for you? Helping Wodica would mean that the secrets of the gods stay hidden. He rubs his hands together, his black eyes gleaming. Safely hidden, yes. From the violent overlords who would cease to fear punishment in the next life. From the heavy-handed masters who would answer to no one. The world needs some schemes. Or are the souls of Kith so pure that you would snap the tenuous threads that bind society? And Thaos makes a better overlord. This one is the god of slaves. What would he have left if the world were unchained from his mistress's lies? Skane takes a bundle at his feet and hefts the burden onto his back. I've explained the alternative, Watcher. Continue as a pawn of the gods, or a partner of one. At the other end of the road, the figure stops. She turns her head just enough to look over her shoulder. Her face is mostly hidden, but one merciless eye peers at you from a cheek of rippled, scorched flesh. I won't help you.
You say that now, but when you're standing in front of the machine, considering the lifetimes and the powers that await you, we'll see what you do.
He continues down the road, and when the sun suddenly drops below the horizon, it plunges you into momentary darkness. You come to your senses in front of the machine. I'm going to just drop down a quick save here before we interact, for reasons. Oh wait, yeah. Before I do, actually, it seems everyone else wishes to speak.
So much for Thaos, then.
The membranes of Palagina's golden eyes sweep out and retract as she gazes into the great machine.
Now you have a chance to set things right, back to the proper order of things. It will take the Deerwood generations to recover, but at least these souls will find their way back to the wheel, as it should be.
We've come to the end of it, my friend. It has been an honor to walk this road with you, and I will regret our parting.
All the hard-won lessons we have survived, I will carry back with me to Rawatai. I'll try to do justice by your story. It's both stranger and more exciting than anything I could have conjured up. Kana studies you for a moment, then smiles. Victory agrees with you, Laniara. You look as if a great weight has lifted from your shoulders. I am glad for it.
Ah, the end of the road greets us at last. You fared well, Watcher. Better than any Watcher has right to. Seems you were a field in need of a flames cleansing. Would that my own trial had produced such an outcome. I had figured myself for the field all this time. But you were the field, and I the darkness. A lesson neither of Durance nor of Margaret. But with that trial's end, a new one begins. A god's trial. And I will stand in judgment without mercy.
Astounding. I always knew the Leaden Key stood for something big, but I didn't quite realize what I'd gotten myself into. And now, you're in the middle of something even bigger. With a decision that will affect millions. But even if you send the souls somewhere specific now, who knows what the next turn of the wheel will make of them? We can't really control what happens to them. Nor should we try. I had to see the monster Thaos had become to realize that.
Maybe so.
It's your decision, of course. And whatever you decide, I'm glad our paths crossed in Gilded Vale.
Never thought I'd see something like this in my travels. Lends a little perspective, doesn't it? All of these notions of who we are, what shapes us. None of it really matters, does it? And yet, if we could heal these broken families, I suppose our journey would be worth something.
Well, thank you for traveling with me.
I'd probably still be twiddling my thumbs by the side of the road if you hadn't come along. Thanks for bringing us this far.
Indeed. As I said, give me a moment to drop a quick save here. The machine resonates with the energy of thousands of souls. Standing near it makes your head spin. One moment. Alright, let's do this. With your companions bearing witness, you step up to the place where Thaos once stood before his people long ago. The great machine lies in front of you, idle, ready. You have seen this machine and others like it in operation. You understand how it works. It is a device for directing souls. As a watcher, it would be a simple matter to influence that direction, though as big as the machine is, it may be the last thing you ever do. Speak the command to activate the machine. There is a shrieking of stone grinding against stone as old cogs loosen and begin to turn. You have only moments before the souls will be sent into the Audra Vein. This will be your only chance at redirecting them. Return the souls to the bodies they were intended for. You close your eyes and expand your perception outward, taking in the immense totality of the tens of thousands of souls orbiting the chamber. Your grasp on the souls is tenuous. You find yourself fighting to keep them all within your influence, and you can feel them slipping away from you as the machine gains speed. A brief moment comes when it feels as though you hold all of them at once, and their force is so great it feels as though they will tear you apart. In that moment, you dedicate your entire being to bending their orbit, channeling their flow in a new direction.
At your command, the ancient device became your instrument, spinning to life with deafening resonance and gathering up the swirling essence like thread on a great spindle. There, in the pale, pulsing glow of the machine that set you on this path long ago, you summoned all your strength, focusing on your objective and blocking out all else. with a single concussive blast that rocked the chamber and sent you tumbling to the ground, you freed the souls from their stasis. Exhausted, your consciousness slipping away, your last sight was of the machine, dark and dormant. Then your eyes closed, and sleep welcomed you at long last. After coming to and searching for some time, you discovered the route Thaos used to enter Sun and Shadow, and embarked on a long and arduous ascent back to the surface. You emerged in Ter Evron after days of tunneling through the rubble Thaos had left behind, and when you stepped into the daylight, you were faced with a different Deerwood than the one you had left. At your direction, the souls diverted by Thaos were guided back to the vessels originally meant for them. For the first time, parents of hollow-born children woke to the cries of their infants and looked into their eyes to see them staring back. People fell to their knees where they stood, thanking Helia or Mogren, or even Aethys for their forgiveness of whatever guilt they felt they bore. But for all the relief that had come to some parents, others only found new grief. For many thousands of Hollowborn had died during Wide One's legacy, many by their parents' own hands. For those children, there would be no homecoming.
Sadly.
Yet the last Hollow birth was in the past now, and those parents willing to risk trying for a new child were frequently rewarded, often with twins. Many felt they saw Helia's hand in it, and the year would be remembered as the year of Helia's splendor. Lord Radric's zeal had brought him back to life once, but it would not do so again. Radric's destruction at your hands spelled the end of his suffocating rule over Gilded Vale and the surrounding area. In his absence, the village prospered, becoming a popular destination for new settlers anxious to leave Defiance Bay after the riots. Without a nearby ruler, it also grew more wild, with many settlers moving on as soon as they'd arrived, turned off by lawlessness that was excessive even by Deerwooden standards. Nevertheless, despite the challenges of living there, Gilded Vale had survived, and would continue to survive for the foreseeable future.
At least there was that.
Following the assassinations of Duke Avar Wolfgren and Lady Webb, Defiance Bay was thrown into political upheaval. In the ensuing weeks, the streets had become the domain of looters and blackguards. Few dared to step outside their own doors alone or unarmed. But order was soon re-established by the Knights of the Crucible, who, despite their depleted numbers, had gained favor in the public eye for their role in the unraveling of the conspiracy surrounding Wideone's legacy, and were quickly reinforced by returning forces from Fleetbreaker Castle.
Well, that's good at
For
least.
the Knights, their resurgence marked a return to the tradition as well. Having seen firsthand the dangers presented by dabblers in animancy, the Order quickly abolished the practice internally, preferring the familiarity of their hammers and forges to the uncertainties of Essence and Adra. Their identity rediscovered, the Knights suppressed their political aspirations and began once again to train their recruits in the art of blacksmithing, recapturing the post-revolutionary ideals of Deerwood and regaining the respect of its citizens as a result.
I consider that a
Though
win.
the machine atop Ter Noaneth had been disabled, it had not seen its last use. Heritage Hill was rebuilt, and no sooner had the first families moved in to resettle the district than members of the Leaden Key, acting under standing orders from their Grand Master, climbed the tower and reactivated the machine. The initiates slew a handful of the new settlers under cover of night, and watched as history repeated itself, the victims reanimating and devouring the survivors. After this second incident, the district would remain abandoned.
That is quite
The Duke's
unfortunate.
assassination at the apparent hands of an animancer had caused catastrophic rioting in the streets of Defiance Bay. But those who had escaped the melee in the palace hearings remembered the testimonies of the strange guest who had shown up that day and absolved animancy, implicating the Leaden Key instead. The rumor spread quickly, and soon the popular belief was that the assassin had been a Leaden Key spy.
Technically true.
When the legacy had lifted, people came to see it not as a sign that the riots had been according to the gods' wishes, as Thaos had hoped, but as a confirmation that animancy had never been the source of the problem in the first place.
Which it wasn't.
Deerwoodans instead convinced themselves that the riots had somehow purged Defiance Bay of Leaden Key spies, and that the end of Whitewind's legacy was their well-deserved reward. The rage against animancers was quickly forgotten, and those who had survived were permitted to return to Brackenbury Sanitarium and rebuild it so they might resume their studies. Abidun's renewal brought new vigor and purpose to a god long known for quiet, steady labor. Handicraft saw a revival in the Deerwood, and no smith wanted for an apprentice. Additionally, Abidun's restored interest in preservation led to redoubled efforts to survey Engwithan ruins. Animancers and craftsmen alike found much to study, but tensions with Aer Glanfath rose.
Yeah, that makes some sense.
As for Stalwart, the Battle of Cairn's Scar only strengthened their resolve to unlock the mysteries of Durgan steel and build new marvels with the White Forge. However, Stalwart's ambitions brought them into further conflict with the Raid Serans, as more and more impoverished communities gathered at the border and vowed to finish the work of the Iron Flail. It would be many generations before the region saw peace.
Well, that is unfortunate.
The Flames That Whisper clan found a cautious peace with Stalwart, particularly once the villagers heard of the aid the ogres had offered against the Eyeless. The clan moved back into the Russet Wood, and as Stalwart grew in prestige, the villagers formed a tighter alliance with their ogre neighbors. Within a generation, ogre traders visited Stalwart, and village hunters were welcome in the Russet Wood.
Well, that's a good ending
Armka's
there.
death had brought the Devil of Carrick little satisfaction. In time, her taste for vengeance soured. What replaced it was a hunger to feel something, anything, new. Summer had thinned the snowpack twice over when she felt the joint at her elbow first begin to stiffen. She turned her back on the hopes of animancy and civilization and walked east. She pushed through the mountains, past Raid Ceres, and into the broad plains of Ishamiddle. She had forgotten what it was like to simply journey, no goal or destination in mind. Though she felt nothing more than the steady thump of her feet on the road, the endless horizons and grassy meadows were new to her. She measured her time in the gradual rusting of her body and was satisfied.
At least she
Her
found some form
movements
of
slowed,
peace.
but so did the world around her. Waist-high grasses undulated and tacked in the wind, as gradual as the tides. Sparrows and blackjays made steady pilgrimages across the sky, each flap of their wings a solemn salute. She could hardly move when she found something she had never seen before, the ocean. With the last of her strength, she pulled herself beneath the water, content at last to feel the movement of currents and the constant caress of the waves.
So Andra takes her
Sawa
to...
came to believe that the Deccan had survived through him. He returned to Ishamiddle, where he united a number of small, vulnerable tribes under the beliefs of his people. He called them Takanakin, kin of Takan, and under his tutelage, they became strong enough to resist would-be conquerors. Zawa taught his secrets not to one chosen person, but to all, that the line of knowledge might never be broken.
Well, good.
Once Maneha had made peace with her memory, she decided the time had come to face her more recent past. For the first time in decades, she returned home to Rawatai, and she found that it had changed as much as she had. New districts had sprung up along the coast, while others withered into crumbling husks, and the streets had changed their course as surely as rivers. Her parents wept with joy at her return. They still ran the old spice shop, and in its many aromas and flavors, she found memories of the places she'd traveled and the people she'd known. She told her story, bottle by bottle, and began to build a life on the soil she knew best.
I'm glad things went well
The
for
fortress of Cadnua emerged as a bastion of security in the midst of an untamed land, becoming the envy of every thane and earl in Deerwood. Legend grew over time of its impregnability, and stories of formidable invaders easily scattered by the keep's defenses became popular around the hearths of Deerwoodinians. Likewise, It also became a beacon to travelers, merchants, and visiting dignitaries alike. Reputed as the finest fortress in all Deerwood, people would journey from near and distant lands alike to experience its fabled hospitality and grandeur.
We did well.
After the death of the Master below, a strange quiet fell over the endless paths of Ad-Nua. The attacks on the fortress above ceased, Ad-Nua's silent titan the closest remaining thing to a master in its musty, forgotten passages.
Ah, wonderful
Pallegina
there.
had gone against the Duke Spell's orders by inventing a new trade arrangement with the Anamenfath to accommodate the recovering Deerwooden market. With the Deerwood's people still weakened by Weidmann's legacy, the Valian republics easily pushed their would-be competitors out of the market. For her outrageous insubordination and audacity, Pallegina was banished from the republics. She traveled north in the Eastern Reach, avoiding Valian ports and entering the ranks of the kind wayfarers. Despite her bravery and dedication to those in her care, her strange appearance made her feel like an outsider wherever she went.
She stood up for herself.
Aravius took his leave of the party and, after his first bath in years, returned to his nomadic lifestyle. With his homesickness expunged, he found renewed joy and tranquility in his wandering survey of the wilderness. For the first time in his life, he ventured beyond sight of the mountains of Glonfath. During his travels, he penned numerous journals and sketches detailing his travels through frozen tundra, searing desert, and tropical forests. Wherever he went, Aravius left behind stories of the Autumn Druid, a temperamental, one-eyed wise man of the forest, known to bring food to lost travelers, and unusual advice to anyone willing to ask him a question. Adair chose not to return home to Gilded Vale. Through a number of quiet inquiries, he soon found his way into the underground organization of Aethasians known as the Night Market. Ironically, in learning that the gods had been fabricated, Adair found his faith in Aethus renewed, and that his god was neither alive nor truly a god had become irrelevant. He rose quickly through the ranks of the Night Market for his optimism and for his bold leadership, his ultimate goal to make the Deerwood a place that would welcome followers of the Shining God once again.
Oh, fair enough.
When the dust settled in Sun and Shadow, Aloth looked upon the remains of Thaos Ixarchanon, his former master. He saw where the Grand Master had gone wrong and what would be required to undo the harm Thaos had wrought. With a flick of his wrist, he burned Thaos's robe, headdress, and every other symbol of the man's power. Never again, he vowed, should Kith live in fear and blind obedience to an authority they did not understand. Armed with the knowledge and courage he had gained on his journeys with the Watcher, he set out on the long and lonely task of dismantling the Leaden Key.
Maybe start over with what's going on.
With both their aims fulfilled, Kanarua bid the Watcher farewell and sailed back to his beloved Rawatai. There, he reported on his findings to the Lore College. Kana spoke of the Engwithan people, describing both their vile experiments and their inspiring accomplishments. He spoke too of the destruction of the tablet by the Leaden Key, and the group's efforts to erase the Engwithan legacy from the world. Both inspiration and cautionary tales, he said, could be found in the world beyond Rawatai's borders. Kana urged his people to continue to pursue knowledge abroad, so that the lessons found there might benefit Tekoa. Kana's inability to prove his theory of Engwithan influence diminished his academic standing, but his passion drew much interest from those less concerned with degrees. Kana swiftly became an influential figure in the move toward a more collaborative approach to expansion on the northern continent. In his personal life, he came to enjoy the reputation of an affable eccentric, willing to share grand and impossible secrets, along with a drink and a song. With Thaos defeated and the souls released from Sun and Shadow, healthy children were born once again in the Deerwood. The grieving mother sought a place where she might do penance for the birthing bell. She returned to Deerford, where, to the astonishment of the villagers, she delivered the first healthy child in over a decade. She remained there, and with each new birth, she saw a measure of hope restored to the Deerwood, and a measure of grace for her own troubled past.
Good on her.
Durrance used Mogren's strength only until Thaos had been cast from the world, and then, swore off her influence entirely. Regret came to weigh heavily on his mind, and a man who had never previously lacked for words or opinions came to embrace silence and contemplation. He continued to wander, penniless and destitute, searching now not for the reason for his goddess's silence, but for a mechanism for revenge. The charred robes he continued to wear as a reminder that he had been burned by his goddess, and not just by the flames of the Godhammer. After 5 years of searching for Persak, Sagani's 4-month journey home felt longer still. The Deerwood, Aer Glonfoth, the Valian Republics became places on a map, endless expanses of green between her and Nasitok. Her homecoming was celebrated by all of Masuk, yet it was the reunion with Kalu and their children that truly brought her joy. She relinquished her role in the long hunts, and ever after, she and Itumak spent their days working in the village and their nights at her hearth. She watched her own children and their children grow and thrive. When she finally passed, she lay surrounded by the affection and tears of 5 generations.
Well, she lasted quite a while.
The death of Thaos brought an end to your waking visions, and a silence to the whispers of the past. In their absence, you were able to sleep. The questions of a distant lifetime ceased to trouble your soul. All that remained was what to make of the answer. But at the moment, there was little to be done, and the matter would have to wait. A long journey loomed ahead.
And so it ends. Is there anything after this? I don't believe so. Nope, just the end credits. And with that very long final episode, Pillars of Eternity is done. Quite an interesting story in a way. I can see many of the influences that it took from other games, and I think it went well. There is a second one that did come out, Pillars of Eternity 2, and we will do it in time, but I'm going to hold off on that for at least a little bit, just because I have other plans going on. Specifically, because of time-wise. If you don't mind me talking a little bit here, I do plan on doing Baldur's Gate 3 when it officially comes out and is no longer in early access. And that's going to be at the end of August. Here's the thing, that is approximately 3 months from now. Probably a little less by the time this comes out. And considering how long this took, I'm fairly certain I would not complete Pillars of Eternity 2 in 3 months. So I am going to be spending a little time trying to figure out just what I'm going to play in order to fill up these next 3 months, so that I can finish that in time, or stop it in time, and I can get right into Baldur's Gate 3 when it comes out. So I'm not quite certain what I'm going to be doing. I got about a week to figure it out, so I'll be doing some thinking. I probably made a choice by the time this episode has come out, and have started it on my stream. But it'll be curious to see. Until then, thank you for joining me, everyone. We will be continuing Pillars of Eternity probably after Baldur's Gate 3. But until then, I am Chester44, also known as Falai. That was Laniara. This has been a Let's Play of Pillars of Eternity, and I shall see you all next time.